Today's podcast was actually recorded in March when I attempted to begin this podcast, and then I just didn't until November. So I had good intentions, never got my act together. Getting it together now that it's November. But this was recorded back in March. The courses that we mentioned in it are available at taylorjacksoncourses.com. Specifically, at the end, we talk a little bit about how to make money in landscape and travel photography that comes with a course called How to Travel the World for Nearly Free, which essentially gives you the tools to kind of connect with different vendors and scripts to hopefully get some free trips for your photography and video skills. On to today's podcast. All right, I'm joined here today by Adam Goarly. Welcome, and you are almost local to me.
Yes, I know. It's only about an hour and 40 minutes away.
Yeah, and it's funny because even though I only live like an hour away, do you live in London, Ontario?
I live just outside, so it's about 10 minutes from London. So basically,
okay. Yeah, it's very strange. So I live in Waterloo, which is like an hour away from there, and for the most part, like I think I've shot 2 weddings in London, which is like the weirdest thing because I'm only an hour away. Yeah. And the same goes with another city that's like literally 15 minutes away from me, called Guelph. And I think that I've shot maybe 3 weddings there in like my entire 15-year career. So it's like, it's very interesting. I think that all of these like little ecosystems kind of all exist somewhat individually, which is awesome. For somebody kind of getting established in it. Do you want to kind of maybe just talk a little bit about how you got into photography? I'll let everybody know that is this your last year of high school?
This is my last year. Yeah. A few months left.
That's crazy. Like to be in a place that you already have a professional business and like your web presence looks like you've been doing this for like 10 years. And your portfolio is the same, that it looks like you've done a lot of work, and it's really cool to see that.
Thanks. Yeah, I've really tried to make myself look like I've been doing it for a lot longer than I have. I don't lie. I never bring up my age in client meetings unless someone asks, which has only ever been once, which I don't think it really is a positive for me, for my clients. But when people, after they've shot their wedding or I've done work with them, they're like, wow. And it doesn't seem to bother them at all. If anything, It actually kind of, they're like, wow, that's pretty cool. I've got, yeah. For sure. But basically what happened is I started when I was 12. I saved up all my birthday money and Christmas money and bought my first camera. And I couldn't even afford the lens yet. So I just bought the camera and then asked my mom if she knew anyone that had lenses. And I started borrowing the lenses because I knew I had to get a DSLR. I didn't want to have anything else because I knew they look cool and all the pros use them. So I had to get myself one of those. And then basically I bought my first lens a few months after, 50 mil 1.8. And that setup was what I used to do, flowers in the backyard, all this stuff. And then started shooting my brother's baseball games and hockey games, and then saved up and then finally bought the D70-100, which was like the biggest step for me. So I finally bought that camera and then started shooting everything I could. And then I think around maybe 14 or 15, maybe 14, I shot, went to my first wedding that I had actually ever been to. It was my cousin's wedding. And I had actually reached out to her, like my cousin, and messaged her and asked her about what wedding photographer was, because I wanted to message him and ask him, if I could kind of shadow him, walk around and just kind of see how he worked, so I could get some photos for my portfolio. Because right then, by that age, I kind of knew that I wanted to just at least try weddings because it looked pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So then I just kind of shadowed them and started I used those photos from the wedding that I took for my website and my Instagram and then my platform, and started advertising. And then from there, I started to book a little bit more work. And then after that, I ended up actually booking my first wedding when I was 16. So that was the first, about a year and a half ago, I booked my first wedding.
That's awesome.
Just from photos that were on like a $700 camera. And yeah, it's actually the ring shot that's on my website still, is the one that I used in my advertisement, booking weddings for $899 or something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's kind of the start.
Yeah, I think to fill in some of my story as well, I think that I started. So I originally I got interested in Photoshop. So I was kind of the graphic end of it first before I found photography when I was a little bit later. But yeah, I was around like I would say the age of 12, maybe 13, and it was my first job that I was selling like these little. It was like on online forums that everybody needed like a cool signature. So I'd charge like $5 to people to make them like a cool like graphic with their name in it, and then that's kind of what slowly financed my first kit. So it's really cool to I don't know, see that kind of everyone starts the same way, that it's like, okay, like we begin with one piece of gear and then hopefully generate a little bit of revenue and then buy another piece of gear, rather than just like jumping all in. But it seems like you're on kind of your right on the right track. And how did the next weddings come along? Was it just advertising, or did you reach out to anyone and try to second shoot or anything like that, or are you just straight up just going to do it kind of on your own?
Yeah, so basically, once I had booked my first wedding, which I still haven't even shot yet, they actually had gotten the wedding got pushed back by another year. So it was supposed to be this summer, which it wasn't. It was next summer. It's going to be next summer now. But I basically I've got it written down here, about 80, maybe 80 emails, a little bit less, probably like 75 emails
Yeah.
to all the photographers around here, like everyone, like at least twice.
Yeah.
Basically just said, here's my portfolio. I'd love to come out and, second shoot, da da da. And then I got an Excel sheet going with all the people that emailed me back. And if they emailed me back and said, we have people this year, but, maybe try again next year,
Yeah.
or you're too late, try again earlier in the season. I put them all in an Excel sheet and I actually got two people, like two photographers I started working for. And one of them I actually did weddings. I think 4 weddings with them, like second shooting. And this is when it really, really started to expand, because I started actually making money from photography, which is the first thing that's ever happened to me. And I thought this was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I actually shot 2 weddings in London here with them, and then one wedding in Toronto with them, and doing a giant Chinese wedding in Toronto. And that was absolutely amazing. It was this huge, really high budget wedding. And I was just standing here. This is like my 3rd wedding I've ever been to in my life, not even shooting. And I had thought that I was kind of in awe. I was like, wow, this is really starting to become something. And then I just basically used those photos to advertise, and then advertised with Facebook ads, which have been the biggest thing for me. I booked 2 weddings from a $13 Facebook ad, an Instagram ad. And I found out about Facebook ads from your online course. I think Book More Weddings 2017, the first one, because they were talking about how simple it is, and putting, brides in that, or people that have been recently engaged.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I booked 2 weddings from a $13 ad.
That's like the best return on investment I've ever heard of.
It is, yeah, because I booked I got a bunch of leads, which I added those into my email list, which is good too. But I got, the one fully booked, I think it was like a few $1,000 for the wedding, like 2,100 or like $1,800 wedding for that one. And then her family member, like she referred me to her family member, and then she booked me. So I haven't even shot her wedding yet, but 2 weddings there for $13, right? So
That's so good.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love Facebook and Instagram ads. They're incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess like the positive thing, at least with like my career arc, is that it was like really hard in the beginning. And then as soon as I kind of got to the age where all my friends started getting married, that's like when things kind of really started to accelerate rapidly. So it's awesome that you also get to go through like that period as well, which is, I would say, like the highest grossing period. Like that's, I think, where at least a lot of my friends kind of all launched their careers. So it's like, it's really cool that you have everything together for that like step in your life. So I think that's like, you're going to be crazy successful.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's really, really awesome. Have you experimented at all, I'm assuming, with Instagram at this point?
I really want to try out Instagram stories, because I know that when I'm on story, I don't even really scroll through Instagram anymore. Like I do a little bit, but I find that, the first maybe 10 photos that I see, I don't want to sit there going with my thumb for a long time, which I think is maybe it's just a me thing. But I love when I see Instagram story ads, because I'm like, I have to basically see it, right?
Yeah.
There's only one thing on the screen when you're viewing an Instagram story, and it's that. So I think that it might be something interesting to try. I haven't experienced with it yet, but I've done a few boosting of posts. So if I put something on there, I'll boost it, and I'll usually get like, 10 to 15 followers from like a $3 or $4 boost.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even have to be like a $50 boost, and I still get some people who are interested.
Yeah, and they're targeted followers too. So I'd say that's a really good investment as well.
For sure.
Yeah, I think Instagram stories is next on my list. I want to actually start filming stuff in proper vertical mode. So I'll actually have, I don't know what I'm going to make yet, but it's going to be a thing. But I totally agree that I don't know if it's just the oversaturation of content on Instagram that I kind of feel the same way, that scrolling through things, I almost feel like every time I load it up, it's the same like 10 images, just in like a slightly different order. And it's also, I feel like I don't really know anybody that's popping up in my feed anymore. But it seems like Stories does a good job of curating who I actually want to like look at and what stories I actually want to consume. So I don't know if the algorithm's different, or if they're experimenting with things, because I feel like it's constantly changing, but it's definitely something good. And then the other, like the oddball that I have never experimented with is like Facebook messages or messaging or whatever it is.
Okay.
Have you heard anything about it? Because it's like the like online sales guys are like all into it, and I just think that it's weird.
Yeah, is that like putting ads on Facebook Messenger, or is that like a messaging bot?
It's like putting ads on Facebook Messenger. So whenever you go to your messages and you scroll down, it'll be like that you have an ad from this or a message from this person, and it'll be like clearly a sponsored thing. But then you can interact from it from there.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's interesting. No, I haven't really looked into that at all. Kind of seems almost too personal for our business, like being wedding photographers. Like just, I don't know. That might just be me, but I've never really looked into it, so I'm not too sure.
Yeah. Here's, I guess, a personal question for you. Do you use Facebook a lot, or are you more on Instagram than Facebook?
I think I'm personally more on Instagram because of, I think I started more on that because of the age that I am. I don't know anyone that actually uses Facebook being 17 now. Most people kind of don't use that anymore. So I think just being on Instagram is more what I'm on. Like I have a personal Facebook account, but I don't really post too much on there. I get tagged in things if I'm out with people that are usually older than me. People will take a photo and they'll tag me in it. But I don't really spend too much time on Facebook. I wish I spent more time just for the whole business sense. Yeah. I think it looks really nice if you have a constant active Facebook feed. I wish that's something that I could do better, but I'm not too active on that.
No, I've noticed that for sure, with basically how expensive it is to target anybody that's even, I would say, less than like 23. The cost just goes way up. And I know that's because, one, there's a lot of demand to target those people, and two, because there's probably not a whole lot of users. And I feel like that if they are a high targeted kind of group, that I don't know, I probably wouldn't be on a platform if I was constantly seeing ads and things like that at a higher rate than, I guess, like Instagram stories specifically and things like that. But I've also noticed it in Instagram as well, like scrolling through that it seems like maybe every like fifth image is now an advertisement. And again, like, yeah, it's just like, just scroll faster. And I guess one other thing to kind of interject is we do like a local food show here that's like completely disassociated from my wedding business. And I have noticed that because the targeting is much different there, that our kind of core audience is, I would say, like 25, 26, 27, up to like 60. And the bounce rate on the younger end of our audience looking at watching videos is something like maybe they get like 3 seconds into the video. Whereas people that are like 35 plus, I think it's like average like 48 seconds or something. So it's like a significant difference that these people are actually interested in watching content, which doesn't necessarily align with, I guess, wedding photography and who your target couple is. So I just thought that was interesting, and I just discovered it earlier this morning before I left. So putting that out into the world.
For sure, I went. I went to a conference in Toronto. It was for the Gen Z, so like our generation marketing. And a bunch of people had talked about stuff like that, about how our age, especially with Instagram, people are more interactive on the stories because people don't actually scroll through constantly. People are kind of have that, I don't know what the word is. You know, when you're on the Instagram and you're like constantly pulling down and shuffling your speed, and you like shuffling your feed, and there's that little loading bar. People just constantly love doing that to see like what the next new thing is. And stories are right there. So people constantly just click them. It's just kind of right where your thumb is. And it was really interesting because it kind of went down into a little bit of the science and how people were, especially our age, that how people interact with social media now compared to beforehand. And I think it's really interesting.
That is super interesting. What are, do you have like a few takeaways from like that entire experience that you would be able to share? Even if it's just like something, because I feel like kind of the majority of this audience for this podcast is probably somewhere between like 25 to 40. And I feel like even me hearing that, that you barely ever, like that you rarely use Facebook unless somebody older is interacting with you, that's super interesting to me. And I know that my brides are traditionally a little bit younger. So that actually kind of like influences the way that I'm going to do my future marketing, just like in these couple seconds. So anything else that you can share, I'd be personally interested.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely our like the Gen Z is a lot different than, so I feel like marketing is definitely going to change dramatically in the next few years. I'm not a huge marketer and know what I know, but I feel like the biggest thing for me is going to like these conferences isn't just for learning. I think is the whole networking thing. So when I went there is just basically, listening. A lot of the stuff there was people just yelling, basically just saying, get off your butt and work hard to get things. I found out that's what a lot of the conference was. Some things were just people kind of bragging about their life and showing all these cool things, which is good for motivation. But I found that the biggest thing was just networking with people and meeting and chatting with people and learning things that different people would say. So, like some things, I made some amazing connections with some VCs that, told me to hit them up if I had a business idea, and they'd be totally interested in funding it because they just talked to me and could tell that hopefully stuff in the future will be right for me. And they just basically said that, and then I just messaged a bunch of different people after the venue. Was following up I think was key. So not just, making a connection and not doing anything about it. I think actually making a connection, messaging them on Instagram, being like, oh, it was awesome to meet you, and then maybe, just kind of keeping a relationship going. I feel like a lot of people meet people and make nothing of it afterwards. So I'm big on, creating good, solid connections with people. And I think people are what get me everywhere I can. Like people help me, book weddings, people help me advertise. People are always talking about me because everyone knows that I'm a photographer because that's all I talk about. Right. And that's the other thing too. I think just basically telling everyone that I meet, not pushing it too much, but I want everyone to know that I'm a wedding photographer after I've talked with them. And that's really helped me too with booking weddings. But yeah, I think I might have gotten a little off topic there on the whole marketing side of thing, but I think at least like kind of to just reaffirm your point is that the most important thing, at least in my early career, was just getting in the same room as other people that were kind of in the same boat as me. And I really loved kind of that everybody was at least kind of in a similar spot to start. And it was so interesting to see how people grew kind of year to year. And when someone else that like you met at a conference like that starts doing like incredible things, it motivates you to like step up your game and get to that level, because it's possible, like you guys met, like they're not this unknown figure from the internet. They're actually somebody that you've interacted with. So I find an incredible amount of motivation from people like that. One other thing that I want to maybe ask you about is, so at least in kind of my world, video specifically, I guess we'll talk. So when I'm marketing towards businesses, I have like a pretty good commercial side of my business. And I can tell that a shift is going to happen at some point, that everything is going to be a lot more video driven, because I feel like everybody's kind of growing up on Snapchat and growing up on Instagram stories. And as everybody kind of begins to enter the workforce, I feel like there's going to be a big shift in kind of business to business communications. Do you agree kind of with that or disagree? Or I 100% agree with that. And I've definitely seen, even in London here, the amount of people that have jumped up and started shooting photo and video has been in the last year. It has, I think there's at least 4 or 5 photographers in London now that do that. And I was surprised because like it's going to be huge, right? And for brides not having to book a videographer and a photographer, just having to book one, I think is massive. But also just like you said, business to business communication, like video is so much more interactive, right? Than just messaging and stuff. And that's with me. Like I don't even text people anymore. And that's another thing with my age. A lot of people don't really text. Like Snapchat is everything. That's what I message people on. That's like, I don't, the only people I text, like if I'm on my phone right now, the only people I text, mom, and everyone on my first 5 messages is at least over 30. So if that goes to show something, right? Like I think, which is, sending photos and videos, that's just kind of the new thing. Cause it seems like you're there talking to someone, right?
That's crazy. I'm like, thank you so much for kind of sharing this with me. Cause I find this like super personally interesting. And I don't know, I guess maybe this does give me a push to do, a lot more Instagram stories, I think. So if there's like one takeaway, even just for me, I think I'm going to actually get my life together and do that. And that's also really cool that there's a really high density of people doing photo video in London, because I feel like around here there's still maybe like 1 or 2, which I think is interesting because I'm definitely kind of like a champion of that type of coverage. And I would have figured that more people locally would have kind of just started picking it up, but maybe it's a London thing over top of here, because I haven't really noticed it in Toronto either. But I think it's a positive step for the city, I think, in general.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it's massive at all by any means, but I've just seen like even on our group chats, like for the wedding photographers on Facebook, I've seen, in search of a second shooter, we shoot photo and video coverage. So like constantly, I've seen a few posts like that, which is interesting. And I haven't seen that in the last year or two. But one other thing too, like with video is I never used to shoot video. And then maybe a few months ago, I started like really getting into video, just kind of doing kind of small little travel videos. I went to Jamaica, I think last March break, and I did my first video there ever shot on a Nikon D3S, which does not shoot very good video at all. And it was, I think, 24p, and I tried to slow it down, and then I realized, wait a second, you can't cut 24p in half. That doesn't work like that. And then I actually started saving up because I knew I wanted to get a video camera. D850 came out, and I'm like, that is my dream camera. That's got everything I've ever wanted. And then I ended up saving up, making some calls, and got a few $100s off in savings, and was able to sell the camera. And I actually purchased the D850. So that's my baby now, and it's amazing. But what I just wanted to say is that I actually just got back from probably one of the big turns in my life, from, realizing, wow, it's only been 2 years, and I just got about a $5,000 plus trip paid for.
Nice.
Everything paid for doing video and photo coverage. I just got flown to St. Bart's in the Caribbean. I
saw that on your Instagram.
And and I had done and I did photo and video coverage for this huge race. That's one of the biggest Caribbean regattas. I'm a big sailor. I've been sailing for the last 8 years. And I basically just messaged this girl on Instagram who owned one of the boats that I had been on once here in Toronto, and just messaged her, said, hey, if you're back in Toronto, I'd love to do some free photos and videos, basically because I just wanted to make some connections in the industry. And she basically said, I think about 5 days after that, she had booked my plane ticket, and we had, figured everything out. And then about maybe 12 days after my first Instagram message to her, I was on a plane to St. Martin in the middle of, I was still in school. I had to miss a week of school, but I got a full trip paid for and was able to just do photo and video. And like I did photo and video maybe for 45 minutes or less in the day, would edit a little bit at night, and the rest of the time I just got to hang out. And it was, your one program, it was, I think it's Travel the World for free with your camera. That one. And that was, I basically watched that and I was like, oh my God, this is life changing. Like, this is insane. And then I actually acted upon it, which is another big thing, is actually, acting on things. And, I just did. Like, the worst thing they're going to say is no. And I think that's kind of like my quote that I'm living off is, The worst thing they're going to say is no. The best thing they're going to say is yes, or, some other answer. But I think it's just, just from asking that, I've only been doing photo and video for I started my business 2 years ago. I only have like less than 4,000 followers. I don't have a huge following, and I'm still able to, leverage my services and get things for free. Right. So
that's so awesome.
I think that's been awesome.
That's an incredible success story. Like so I'll share maybe the weirdest fact that I have about my courses. And that is, so after like somebody buys a course, that they sign up for the deal or whatever, I send them the email, and that email with the course link in it that they've paid for, that they own, has like I think a 30 to 45% open rate, depending on the course. So only like less than 50% of the people that actually buy a course open it, which I think is like the most mind-blowing stat ever. So of those people that even open it, like how many, like you're probably part of like a 1 or 2% that actually would even like, one, watch everything or watch at least the relevant parts, and two, actually start doing it. So I commend you for that. And that's an awesome success story. That's a crazy, like great success story, that I feel like everyone would aspire to ever book something like that. So, so props for actually doing it and reaching out to them, and
for actually opening.
Yeah. And also for opening that email. 'Cause that's silly. So I guess we'll kind of wrap it up here. I like to keep everything around like 30 minutes or so. Any parting words,
for sure.
Things to inspire potentially other photographers that are maybe in your boat that, are just getting started a few years in and maybe seeing some early success, you'd like to share with them?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is people always have excuses for things. And, me being only 16 and when I started my thing, not having any experience, not having any money was the first thing too. I had to save up and I had to pay for everything myself. Is actually just going out and doing things. Like I said, I sent, so many emails to every photographer and kept an Excel sheet, about who responded and who didn't respond, or who said, oh, I think I want you to have 10 weddings first, Adam, before, you work for me. I waited till I had 10 weddings, sent them a message, and then started working with them. Right. So I think, meeting people, especially if you don't have a portfolio at all, messaging photographers and finding out if you're able to use those photos for your portfolio is huge. It kind of, one thing is getting experience, but you actually have to have something to show for it. Right. So actually working with a photographer who's, down to let you use the photos afterwards is huge. I feel like if they're just, using you, you bring them, they give you the memory card at the start and they take them at the end. It's awesome for experience. Definitely do that. Don't just sit, and do nothing all weekend, go and do that. But also try to find photographers that'll let you keep the photos and use those photos, Facebook ad them. And then soon enough, you'll start booking weddings.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I personally learned a lot, so I'm glad that we had this talk, and hopefully other people have learned an equal amount. All right, cue the music. I'm kidding. There's no music. You know this podcast, the No Music podcast with Taylor Jackson, ex-concert photographer. Listened to too many concerts in my life, so now I don't have music on my podcast. That is the reasoning for that. I'm kidding. That's not the reason. Anyways, I will be back tomorrow because it is a daily podcast, and that's what you've come to expect. So see you tomorrow. Episodes go up at 8 a.m. every day, if you haven't noticed that. So maybe head over and check that out before your morning commute. 8 a.m. Eastern. So if you're somewhere else in the world, maybe do the time shift, because I'm not very good at time shifting unless it's Japan, because it's 12 hours and it's pretty easy. I've just gone to Google and checked, and it is not 12 hours. I think Hong Kong is 12 hours from here. Let's find out. Time in Hong Kong. Nope, that's not 12 hours either. Daylight savings time ruining everything. Absolutely everything ruined by daylight savings time.com.